MBBS Colombo, MHP Massachusetts, FAMS Singapore, Fellow of the Academy of Medical Educationists of the United Kingdom. He is presently the Director of the Center of Medical Education of Yong Lu Lin School of Medicine at the National University in Singapore. Dr. Samarasekara has been involved in curriculum planning, evaluation and student assessment, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level. He is currently on the editorial advisory boards of the Southeast Asian Journal of Medical Education, the Korean Journal of Medical Education, and assists in the editorial office of the Stanford University. Dr. Dujipa Samarasekara's main interests are in effective teaching, learning behavior and assessment, and has published in peer-reviewed journals as well as authored book chapters relating to medical and health professional education. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Dujipa Samarasekara, who will now speak on interprofessional education and collaborative practice, trends, issues, and strategies.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, for that lovely introduction. Let me first of all tell you that I'm really honored and happy to be here. And I'm indeed, I consider it as a privilege to be part of this great conference. And while he's setting this up, may I also share my thanks? Is it?
Which side?
Yeah, it's on here. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Can I just go look and make it?
It's a relatively picture.
Which one is it?
You can't wear seat, there are no seats.
In about 5 minutes. I'll just listen.
We have a video? Oh, no, that's fine.
I'm sorry about that short interruption. I'll catch up with time, and hopefully I will not go over time. Let me get back to the set of slides. Something has happened. My slides have all gone blank. Okay. Yes. So as you know, I've heard, I've been born, bred, and raised in Sri Lanka, but for the last 11 years, I have been working and living in Singapore. And as you know, Singapore is quite famous for its contemporary architecture, modern architecture, food, and also the old world charm. I'm with the School of Medicine at the National University of Singapore, and we just celebrated our 110th anniversary just 1 month ago. About 1 week ago. And the medical school is one of the leading medical schools in Asia. And I am attached to the Center for Medical Education, and my current role is as the Center Director is to capacity build the faculty in delivering the cutting-edge curriculum, as well as to support them in their educational scholarship, as well as leadership in medical education and health professions education. The medical school is also housed with the nursing faculty, and then that's what I'm going to share with you later on. So my focus is basically to discuss the characteristics of interprofessional education and interprofessional collaborative practice, and also give an overview of interprofessional education in the region, as well as discuss some of the personal experience in incorporating interprofessional education I was fortunate enough to be in the inaugural committee about 5 years ago when the Dean of the School of Medicine suddenly called myself and my colleague Joshua Jacob, who is the Assistant Dean, to start the interprofessional education and interprofessional collaborative practice at the National University Health System, our academic health center. I start off with music because just like today's speaker, Tan Sri Datu Abiyadin in general, he started off with music. So the music is a nice way to share with you about interprofessional education. So as you know, no one can whistle a symphony. You need an orchestra to play it. And this is exactly the conceptual framework of interprofessional education and collaborative practice. So let's roll back a little and look at the practice of medicine, how it was practiced from 18th, 19th, and 20th century to about mid part of 20th century. So this painting, The Doctor, by Luke Fildes, a contemporary of Charles Dickens, actually exemplifies the practice of medicine in the last century and beyond. The medicine was concentrated with single profession, doctors at the helm. And the doctors were the ones who were taking the decisions. It's simply because that was the way that the knowledge gained and also how the knowledge was built up in those days. It was not easy to access information, and then mostly it was fact and content-based learning. So you go into the medical school and then you learn from books and from your elders, and then from there onwards you build your knowledge base from your individual experience. So this typical picture of doctor looking at the patient and then closely observing, monitoring, coming to a diagnosis, ordering treatment, taking care, and the follow-up was the norm in the past. And the most of the time, the focus is more on the individual competence. Each one of our professions, like for our certification or recertification, was built on the individual competence. However, fast forwarding to 21st century, this is how the medicine is practiced today. It's no longer an individual occupation. It's a team occupation, where from the very beginning you work with teams. Why? Because there's information at your fingertips. Right? You can leverage on your other healthcare teams to deliver a quality care, and then as medical profession you can oversee and coordinate and work with them in delivering this care and looking at problems and then turning these problems into question and then to learn by questioning, and also complementing the experience with knowledge from evidence-based data. Of course, the competence has moved away from individual competence to team competence. And this is how now a major recertification is happening. Now in Singapore, recertification of doctors are moving away from individual competence to look at how they perform with the team. And the team is certified. And this is called now, we are moving into this new way of certification. And this is called also the credentialing, so that the team is certified instead of the individual. So you can see the practice has moved from individual person to a team. So with that, these are the operational definitions of interprofessional education, that when two or more professions come together, they learn about, from, and with each other. And then leading from there, when they move into the practice arena, that they learn to work with, together, delivering highest quality of care to their patients. And this is what we are trying to achieve through the IPE and IPC. So what's the framework? I again go back to the WHO definition and the framework. So when you train your present workforce together, they become, through interprofessional education, they become collaborative practice-ready health workforce. And once they're collaborative practice-ready health workforce, then they get into collaborative practice and providing optimal health care. Now, what is happening around the region? Is this really incorporated into education and practice settings? Well, if you look at from North America, from Canada, from US, from the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, which Singapore is now part of, if you look at the African continent, or if you look at the Australia, New Zealand, or even the UK, and coming back to Singapore, interprofessional education and interprofessional collaborative practice is now integral to training of health professionals, as well as making sure that they work together in the practice. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, the certification now has moved from individual doctor certification to a team certification and credentialing. So this is all nice, but really, does this work? Is it nice on paper, nice on theory, frameworks are beautiful, but does it work? So this was the same question we asked 5 years ago, because we didn't want to just jump into something just because US is doing it, UK is doing it, and the Western world is doing it. We wanted to really see whether would this really work in our area, because Singapore as well, as I shared with you, we have 110 years of history. Is this really going to add value to education and to practice setting? Now, this was the challenge that was thrown to the interprofessional committee when we were formed in the inaugural committee. And what we did was we looked at the evidence. Now, we didn't have to look far because there's plenty of evidence out there published about the effectiveness of interprofessional education, interprofessional of collaborative care, and also in different formats of interprofessional education. And one of the really good databases that we managed to access is from Thomas Jefferson University, where they have archived very nicely collectively about interprofessional education, impact of interprofessional education and collaborative practice. For example, evidence of interprofessional education, how does it work? And what are the pitfalls? What are the strengths? And how does the interprofessional teams, when they go out there to practice, what is the impact of that? What is the return on investment in intensive care units, in inpatient teams, and when they are managing chronic illnesses like diabetes, stroke patients, in hypertension patients with hypertension? I'm going to come back to this later on and share some of our own experience and some of our data, as well as in palliative care, in geriatrics. In all these areas, the evidence is out there. There's a huge lot of data where you could use. So there are 4 key learning points in interprofessional education. First of all, by getting students to learn together from medical, nursing, allied health, and other professions supplementary to medicine, what happens is that there's increased clarity of roles, which means that the doctors will not fight with the nurses, and the nurses will not fight in the future with allied health, with the midwives, etc. I'm sure that KDU that does not happen, but it's not the case outside. But what we have also found is that there's increased clarity of roles, and with that brings improved respect between health professional groups, leading to interprofessional networks later on. They know each other and they find that things are happening together, and it's much easier to work when you know each other from the very beginning. There's also, you tend to share a common language, right? And that's again a challenge that I see in many of the settings where you learn in silos. The language of medicine is not shared amongst the professions. So you become a bit alien. When the doctors discuss, it is a bit alien to the nurses, and the nurses discuss, it's a bit alien to the other allied health professionals, etc. But this clarifies. And the most important thing is that if you do your interprofessional education, if you plan it smartly, it brings greater cost efficiency in the delivery of education, and that we are seeing in Singapore. About interprofessional collaborative practice, the biggest and the most important is that it creates a positive interaction, and also it endangers mutual trust. You don't feel, the other person is trying to get you, or that other profession will surpass my profession, right? So this brings the mutual trust, improves also the recruitment and retention, and higher level of well-being and job satisfaction among staff. Not only that, it reduces duplicity of services, and we see that a lot because the patients do not get referred to from one person to another person to another person, and it brings the quality, it improves the quality of care to the patients, and ultimately better patient outcomes and satisfaction. So what happens? So what's our own experience? So what we did, we really looked at how the interprofessional education happens in the best centers. And what we immediately realized is that it's not going to work for us. We have to adapt it and develop it so that it suits our own environment. And this is where we develop our own competency framework. Why are we doing interprofessional education? So for that, it has to be underpinned. You have to underpin this in a theoretical framework. Right? So we said that these are the core competencies we want our medical, nursing, dentistry, pharmacy and social work students come together during interprofessional learning to improve so that we can monitor and measure as well. And we use this model, we call it the century egg model. Those of you who come to Singapore and go to a kopitiam or a hawker center, you have this nice century egg where you get the yolk. We call it the interprofessional core curriculum, where all the students must undergo, and then the interprofessional enrichment activities. And this we found the most valuable and impactful are student-led, faculty-supported initiatives. Let me give you some examples. So this is an interprofessional co-curriculum module where the nursing students and pharmacy students, to improve their communication, have to interview a health professional, reflect on that interview, and then have to build a poster, develop a poster. So you can see the students getting together, learning together, and when we evaluate, these are some of the comments from students. For example, they understand teamwork and communication. They develop mutual respect, and this have been doing for the last 5 years. They also say that it has improved communication, and they have learned to compromise. Sometimes they learn to compromise during that early formative years in their learning. And also developing a work-life balance very early in their professional education, right? And what's happening is that they bring these things back into their professional work life. This is another core module where the medical students and the nursing students, they have to undergo this simulation, ward simulation settings. Using hybrid simulation, all the students in the final year medical students and the final year nursing students, they have to successfully complete this module where it simulates a normal ward condition and then a deteriorating patient. And you can see at the bottom here, the Professor of Nursing and the Professor of Emergency Medicine, Malcolm Mahadevan and Sally Chan, they are closely observing and giving feedback. And this is the debriefing session. So you can see they have to pass this. They have to learn together. They go through the motions in actual practice settings right after they graduate in the medical school. And then they reflect on their actions, guided by senior faculty. Now this is senior faculty guiding them. These are interprofessional enrichment activities where students from 2 or more academic units come together to do community service. So this is Project Silver Care, one of the signature programs where they actually get involved in helping the elderly community in Singapore. This is overseas in Indonesia, where the dental students and the pharmacy students and the nursing students do it. This is World TB Day, where all medical, dental, nursing, pharmacy and medical social work students get together to create awareness. And also, in Singapore, we monitor everything, we follow up, and then this is how we use our modified Kirkpatrick's model to evaluate the outcomes, whether it is successful or not. Moving on to interprofessional collaborative practice, what we are seeing, looking through this, the Kirkpatrick model in the longer term, 3 and 4A levels of change, we see a transformation of our students from the previous cohorts. And what is happening is that they're transforming to break the cultural barriers, the usual hierarchies that they had, and then they communicate and trust each other much better. And with this, we have managed to develop our own interprofessional collaborative practice care settings. We have the more traditional ones. I'm sure in Sri Lanka also we have that, because when I was a medical student we saw this, like in the primary health care, you have the maternal child health clinics run as collaboratively. In the hospital, the surgical team work as a collaborative team, etc. But what is coming on now in Singapore are the disease specific, for example, chronic diseases. Now this is a picture of our advanced practice nurse taking care of stroke patients. So we have the advanced practice nurses actually following up, treating, and also managing our diabetic patients, stroke patients, our thyroid and other endocrine patients, chronic illnesses. And they work very collaboratively with the specialist doctors, with the physiotherapists and the others. Similarly, our clinical pharmacists run the asthma clinics, right? And they work collaboratively with the healthcare team. And more recently, this is the recent innovation, we are bringing the entire hospital home, right? These are the target group interprofessional collaborative practice groups. These are the geriatric home care teams, the physical or intellectually challenged patients, and the home care teams, where the entire team selectively go into the teams go to the homes itself and then work with the patients. And what we see, especially the NUH to home, I am attached to the National University Hospital, the Academic Health Center. So the NUH to home, what we see is that when the entire care team works collaboratively with the patient at home, we see less readmissions, improved quality of care, homebound patients, and then their quality of life has improved tremendously. And this we have been managed to do it. Again, what we are seeing our evaluations is that it's a continuum from the interprofessional education moving on to interprofessional collaborative practice. There are limitations. The limitations are, if you, in interprofessional education, if it is over ambitious, it becomes impractical. There's focus more on just individual assessment, giving marks and grades rather than reflection, it's not going to work. And of course, if you have poor faculty and student training, you need to constantly work with the faculty, develop them, expose them to interprofessional settings, and then their mindsets change. For the practice, the organizational barriers. This was the hardest to break, even in Singapore, very Asian, very traditional, but however we have managed to go past that. The hierarchical, administrative and educational structures. The team level, we are seeing that if the teams are not focused, then this is again a problem. And then at individual level, this is very interesting, because now they feel that their commitment is towards the team rather than to their profession or to that particular group. So we are seeing a bit of a dilemma, especially now I'm a nurse, I'm an advanced practice nurse. Should I be more loyal to my nursing profession, or should I be more loyal to the home care team, right, working together? So we are seeing some of this, and we are actually addressing it through, again, reflection and more exposure, more training of our staff. So what are the areas to advance interprofessional education and collaborative practice? Agree to a common vision and purpose. Develop relevant curricula, contextually relevant. You cannot just take something from Canada or US or UK and plonk it here. It has to reflect the local ground level realities. And then of course the continuous training, creating those conducive environments, getting your leadership on board and getting their commitment. Well, this is a very excellent interprofessional collaboration. I was very fortunate to get funding through the Singapore International Foundation to train 50 master trainers from Sri Lanka over the last 3 years. It's called Enhancing Health Professions Education in Sri Lanka. And we have managed to bring this team to Singapore as well to see this and how interprofessional education and collaborative practice happens in Singapore. So you can see one KDU faculty here. Dr. Lalendra was also there recently. So this picture was taken in front of the medical school. And one of the things that the reflections from this team, from the doctors and nurses, what they shared is that this is the first time as faculty we are sitting together to discuss health professions education. And this was, I thought, a marvelous sort of, a platform to develop interprofessional education back here in Sri Lanka as well. So my 4 key take-home messages. Well, first of all, the key organizations such as WHO, they have recognized that interprofessional education leads to better interprofessional collaborative practice. Interprofessional education assists health profession students to appreciate the important roles of different health professionals and interpersonal skills. However, you need to be aware of institutional hierarchies that can hinder this collaboration. And of course, I have shared with you some of the studies showing better teamwork and improved healthcare outcomes for patients through interprofessional education. Well, with that, we all know that we can't play the same instrument, but we can all be the same key and produce beautiful music. With that, I want to thank Dr. Asela Senanayake, Professor Rohini Senaviratne, and the organizing committee of the KDU International Conference for inviting me, the IP Steering Committee at National University of Singapore, Professor Sally Chan and Dr. Ruki Vijayasinghe from Singapore for sharing their slides, some of their slides, and for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diripa Samarasekar, for that very comprehensive talk on interprofessional education and collaborative practice.